Welcome to the 2020 On-Farm Network Results Series. I'm Megan Burns, agronomist for the On-Farm Network program. Let's dive into our 2020 pea fungicide trial results. So these trials are designed to assess the agronomic and economic effects of foliar fungicide in peas. We determine the effect on disease pressure, obviously the effect on yield, and then we also have seed quality analysis underway this year too. So these were the trial locations for the 2020 growing season. There were 8 pea fungicide trials in total. The majority of them were comparing a single application of foliar fungicide to no application, so untreated, unsprayed peas, except for these two in the Swan River area. One of those trials was comparing untreated peas to a double application, and the other was comparing a single application to a double application. So I'll point out what specific combination of treatments was used and what product was used for each of these trials as we go through the individual results. But before we dive into those, I just want to give you an idea of what we were working with for this growing season. So these are the fungicides that were used across the different trials, the diseases that they control or suppress. When we talk about disease ratings in our pea fungicide trials, we're mainly focused on Ascochyta or Mycosphaera. So both foliar, so symptoms on the leaves. It's hard to see in the image, but there are purple freckles all over those pea leaves, and then also Ascochyta or Mycosphaera on the stem. So again, hard to see, but there are the little purple freckles on that stem segment as well. And then we also rate for white mold, which is usually at fairly low levels in peas, but we keep an eye on it and rate for it in our fungicide trials. So the Ascochyta is rated on a severity scale of 1 to 7, and then white mold, if it's present, is rated on a scale of 0 to 5. Okay, so launching into the results, this first trial here, this is from the Woodlands area, was comparing a single application of Diax to untreated peas. So you can see in our disease ratings, foliar and stem Ascochyta were quite prevalent throughout the trial at relatively low levels, right? If we're working on a scale from 1 to 7, somewhere in the neighborhood between 2 and 3 would be quite low, but definitely still there. There was no white mold at this trial, and as you can see, there was no significant yield difference between sprayed and unsprayed peas, which means that that investment in our product didn't pay off, and it represents a profit loss. Okay, so this next trial also compared a single application of Diax to untreated peas. This was in the Dauphin area. Very similar story here. So we have low levels of Ascochyta present throughout the whole trial. No white mold was found here. Again, no significant yield response, so we're not getting that boost in income to offset the cost of that product. This trial was conducted in the Stonewall area, looking at the same comparison, untreated peas to a single application of Diax. Very similar story again. So very prevalent Ascochyta throughout the trial. It affects a lot of plants, but it's at relatively low levels. No white mold, no significant yield difference. We're not getting that income boost with the product to offset the cost of the product. So this next trial was in southwestern Manitoba, and it was comparing a single application of Miravis Neo to unsprayed peas. So in this trial, disease pressure was similar to the other trials. It maybe looked like, mid-season when we did these ratings, maybe fungicide was having a bit more of an effect, but overall still seeing relatively low levels of Ascochyta pressure and no white mold. So again, there was no significant yield response at this trial. However, there's just a little note here under the table. So what happened at this trial is we had 6 replicates, which means we had 12 strips. So 6 untreated strips, 6 strips with fungicide application, randomized, of course, across the trial area. And what happened is one replicate didn't behave the same as all the other ones. So in one replicate, the untreated strip actually out-yielded the treated strip, which is the opposite effect that we would maybe think there would be. And that was inconsistent with the remaining 5 replicates at the trial. Now, when something like that happens, we take a look to see, was there something causing that? Is there cause to remove that replicate that maybe didn't behave as we would expect it to from the data set, which could obviously lead to, a different statistical outcome in terms of yields. In this case, there was no cause to remove that replicate. It wasn't a statistical outlier. There was nothing sort of agronomic that would suggest something was goofy and it should be removed from the data set. So it was kept in there. But just an important thing to note, Obviously, we can't remove replicates just because they don't match what we hope the results to be. But an important note that the inclusion of that replicate that behaved oddly compared to all the others is why this yield result is not significant. So just something to note there. Okay, so moving on to a Nipawa area trial, we're back to a comparison of a single application of Diax to untreated peas here. This was actually in forage peas. And again, we are not seeing a significant difference in yield. Still similar levels of Ascochyta, very prevalent throughout the trial, but relatively low levels, and no white mold present here. A Plumas area trial, again comparing a single application of Diax to untreated peas. Same story, no significant yield difference, not economic in terms of the investment in product, similar disease pressure as the other trials. So now we move into the Swan River area. Both of the Swan River area trials had significant yield differences between treatments. And there's a really important distinction here between these two trials and the remaining pea fungicide trials from 2020, in addition to, obviously, they're in different regions, but that actually played into this. So July 2020 in Swan River was far more wet than normal, and that wasn't the case for the regions where our other pea fungicide trials were located. So the two Swan River trials received a lot more July moisture than what their long-term climate normals are for that month. So while disease pressure still looks fairly low while we were there in early July, the potential for rapid and extensive disease development was certainly present with the amount of moisture that they received throughout the month of July. So this trial compared unsprayed peas or untreated peas to a double application using Cotegra and Delero. And there was a significant increase in yield with the fungicide application. So the double application increased yield by 4.5 bushels an acre compared to untreated peas. However, that increase wasn't quite enough to pay for the cost of that double application. So obviously these numbers can vary a bit depending on what price you're getting for your peas, what your actual costs are. But using our estimates, it wasn't quite enough of a yield boost to pay for that double application, but it did significantly increase yield. And then the other Swan River area trial, like I said, also receiving higher than normal rainfall in July, also having the potential for rapid and extensive disease development throughout that month. This was comparing a single application of Headline to a double application using Headline and Cotegra. And that double application did significantly increase yield over the single application by about just over 7 bushels an acre for this trial. In this case, the double application did pay for itself and then some, so it was an economically favorable outcome here. Okay, so what's next for our pea fungicide trials? Well, on the agronomic side of things, like I mentioned earlier, we are incorporating seed quality analysis this year, so that's something new for our fungicide trials. That's currently underway, and we should have those results shortly. And then in terms of economics, so we're obviously very aware of the benefit that fungicide application can have on disease pressure when disease is present. But what about the economic benefit versus the cost? So when does that just in case application of fungicide that we might put on, just in case disease pressure develops, just because we can't predict the weather, so we're going to put that application on just in case. How frequently does that application actually pay? Is it a justified practice to put on that sort of insurance application of fungicide? And then combining agronomics and economics, can we maybe better predict when a fungicide application is necessary and when it will be economically beneficial? So we're hoping to continue with pea fungicide trials. There seems to be quite a bit of interest in them every year, which is great. So we'll hopefully continue with them and work towards answering these questions. So I'd like to say a big thank you to all of our on-farm network participants. If you are interested in learning more about the program, getting involved, or if you have a trial idea, please feel free to contact me at any time. Thank you.